Howdy, Immortallium here, and welcome to my announcement video for the 4th annual 24-hour manga marathon. Hurrah! Such enthusiasm. Anyway, I'm sure at this point most of you are familiar with what the 24-hour manga marathon is, but for those of you who aren't familiar with it, I'll explain anyway. So, first of all, what is the 24-hour manga marathon? Well, as you might imagine, you read manga for 24 hours. Now, those 24 hours can be made up of one 24-hour period, it could be two 12-hour periods, or, in special emergency cases, it can be 4 6-hour periods. Now, in the case of 4 6-hour periods, you'd have to contact me beforehand, you'd have to ask me for permission to do that, you'd have to say, why is it you can't do 2 12 hours? Is it a job? Do you have, exams coming up? Are you sick? Etc, etc. And if I think the reason's good enough, then I will give you guys permission. But don't be contacting me within this month, because if you contact me in this month and say, oh, I won't have time in December or January, I'll just be thinking, you didn't even try. You didn't try to adjust your schedule or anything. So, first of all, what you have to do in this challenge. So, there are a couple of things you have to do. First of all, you have to show what manga you're reading and announce what category it's for. Once you've done that, you also have to record after you've read the manga, and you have to give kind of a micro review of it. So you have to give like a quick summary of what it's about. You have to say what you thought about it, what you liked most about it, what you disliked most about it, etc, etc. Just a little micro review so that we can kind of get an idea what your experience of it was like. And beyond that, there isn't too much else to the video. It can be as simple as what I just described, or you can make it a bit more complex. You could record the entire day. If there's interruptions, you could record like little mini vlogs about it and explain why those are interrupting your manga marathon and make the video more entertaining. I'm sure most of you guys took note of when I mentioned the word category, is that you have to announce what category the manga's for, and you're thinking to yourself, what is that? What do you mean by categories? Well, this isn't kind of a free-form manga marathon. There are certain categories of manga you've got to read in this challenge. Now, 3 of them are mandatory. Everyone who participates in the challenge has to do the first 3 categories. After that, there's a list of 15 categories, and you pick 3 others from that, for a total of 6 categories that you read throughout the challenge. Now, let's start off with the mandatory category. So everyone who participates will have to do these categories. So first off, you got favorite manga. Now, when I say favorite manga, there's a lot of people who don't particularly have a favorite, or they might have multiple favorites. In that case, you pick one of those, you read it, and you explain to us, why it's one of your favorites. What is it that you like most about it? Is there anything you dislike about it? What is it about? Etc, etc. After that, you have a manga started before 1990. Now, for those of you who were listening very carefully, I said started before 1990. So what I mean by that is if a manga began before 1990, you can read it. It'll count for the category. Even if it's still going, even if it's ended, within the last year or 2, it'll still count as long as the first chapter of it was released before 1990. And that's just to try to kind of introduce some older titles into this manga marathon. I know a lot of manga readers don't particularly take to older manga. They don't really like the art style or the type of storytelling, etc, etc. Although luckily there is actually a lot of people these days who seem to be appreciating older manga. But anyway, that's just to kind of inject this marathon with a bit of older manga. And the last of the mandatory categories is a manga you have no interest in reading. So this is just to try to get people to try something that they're maybe not too comfortable with, or, just to try it out. And when I say that you have no interest in reading, I don't necessarily mean bad. I don't mean that you read that it was one of the worst manga of all time, and you're like, okay, I'm never going to read that because it's meant to be bad. No, I just mean maybe like the premise doesn't sound interesting to you, or maybe it's not the type of genre that you're usually into, or I don't know. It's just a manga that you don't particularly have any interest in reading, for whatever reason. And it's just to get you to try that manga. Maybe you'll dislike it as much as you expected, or maybe you'll like it more than you expected, and maybe that'll actually become one of the series that you want to continue on with. It's just to get you to try things that you maybe wouldn't otherwise. So those are the 3 mandatory categories. Everyone has to do those. The next list is of these other categories. You've got to pick 3 of these categories to do. First off, we have Yaoi or Yuri. Now, in previous years, I made it specific so that guys could only read Yaoi and girls could only read Yuri. But at this point, I'm thinking to myself, what the hell? Why not have it available for both? I mean, they're both niche genres anyway. It doesn't really matter what gender person reads them. So, if you read a Yaoi or if you read a Yuri, whether you're a guy or a girl, you've done that category. Then you have Osamu Tezuka. So basically, you want to read a manga from Osamu Tezuka, the god of manga, one of the most influential manga creators of all time. This is very easy. You just pick a manga that he's written and you read it. That's the category completed. After that, you have a 1-book series. Now, when I say 1-book series, I don't necessarily mean 1-volume series. What I mean by that is if the entire series is in one spine, essentially, then you can that'll count for that category. So let's take an example. Let's say Azumanga Daioh. It was originally released in 4 volumes in Japan and in its initial English release in the West. But there's now a 4-in-1, where you have the entire series in one book. And if you read all of that book, then that'll be that category done. There's plenty of other manga where it's the complete thing in one book. So if you want to do that category, you just need to have like an entire series in one book. That's how you do that one. Then you have OEL, manhwa, or manhwa. What I mean here is if you read an original English language manga, which is a manga that was originally published in English, manhwa, which is a Korean manga, so like a manga that was originally published in Korean, or manhwa, which is a Chinese manga, a manga originally published in Chinese, then you'll have that category done. You don't need to do all 3, you just need to do 1 of those, and you'll have that category complete. After that, you have Gekiga. Now, Gekiga was a movement that began, I believe it was late 50s and lasted until about the 80s. And what it essentially was, it was a rejection of the cartoony nature of manga, as well as the cartoony stories. It aimed for more realistic stories, more realistic artwork, etc., etc. And examples of that would be like Lone Wolf and Cub, Samurai Executioner, the works of Yoshihiro Tatsumi, Onward Towards the Noble Debts, from Shigeru Mizuki. A wide variety of Gekiga manga. And you just got to read one of those series and you will have that completed. Then you have Josei. Now, Josei is a demographic. It's, for example, you guys are probably familiar with Shonen, you guys are probably familiar with Shoujo and Seinen. What Josei is this manga aimed at older women. And it is one of the most underrepresented manga demographics, if not the most underrepresented manga demographic in the West. So there's plenty of examples of manga from that. You might have heard of a couple of them. With the Light, that's one example of it. Bunny Drop, Paradise Kiss, etc., etc. There's a decent variety of Josei manga, and you just got to read one of those and you'll have that category sorted out. This next one I remember putting in almost as a joke, and actually someone actually did it, so this is well worth doing. And it's hentai. So basically a manga that is pornographic. So where you actually have sexual scenes in which you see what they're doing, and you read that, you give us your opinion, and that's it. After that, you have sports. So sports manga. So sports manga, obviously it'll focus on a sport. An example of that might be Cross Game, where it deals with baseball. Or another example might be Ice Shield 21, I believe that's about American football. Slam Dunk, that's about basketball, etc., etc. So if the focus of the manga is sports, or like the sports is the premise, etc., etc., then that'll count. Now, the only thing is I won't include martial arts into that, because quite often martial arts is just kind of an excuse to have a battle manga in it. So it has to be like a legitimate sport. After that, you have Shigeru Mizuki. So Shigeru Mizuki, another very prolific and influential manga creator. He did stuff like Onward Towards or Noble Debts, Kitaro, etc., etc. And if you read something from him, that'll be that category done. Then you have the Year 24 group. The Year 24 group was a very prolific mangaka group of women who revolutionized how shoujo manga was created and perceived, and the way the stories were told in shoujo manga, and some of their techniques even went on to influence a bit in shonen and seinen manga. And if you look up a list of the names of the members of the Year 24 group, and you just find a manga written by one of them, then that'll be counted for your category. There isn't too many of them available in English, but there is a decent little variety of them. Like there's The Heart of Thomas. Rose of Versailles is meant to come out at some point, although I'm not sure when. I don't see any release date so far for it. There's a couple of other examples. Otherworld Barbara, that's coming out. Or is out, actually. I'm not entirely sure if it is out or if it's coming out. Tetera, that's another example. Tetera, Andromeda Stories, etc., etc. So that would count for the Year 24 group. Yoshihiro Tatsumi, one of the founders of the Gekiga movement, there's a couple of works published by Drawn and Quarterly that he wrote, and with the exception of A Drifting Life, which is a mammoth of a book, most of them are actually pretty short. They're usually about like 144 pages long or something like that. They'd be pretty quick to read, and it's from one of the most prolific and influential Gekiga mangaka of all time. That'd be a great one to work on. After that, we have a non-battle focused shonen manga. So when you think shonen manga, you probably think like One Piece, Naruto, Dragon Ball, Fairy Tail, etc., etc. There's a lot of shonen manga that focuses on fighting and destroying your opponent, etc., etc. But there's also a lot of shonen manga that don't focus on that focus on perhaps everyday life or sports, etc., etc. An example of that might be Azumanga Daioh, or Yotsuba, or Cross Game, or Prince of Tennis, or Nisekoi. There's a variety of shonen manga that don't focus on actually fighting. So I just think that would be another great one to do. Oh, of course, actually, another one, A Silent Voice. That's a very popular one at the moment. So there's a good variety of shonen manga that don't focus on fighting. And it's good to just remind ourselves that not every shonen manga has to have people beating the crap out of each other. After that, here are some of the new categories. So all of those categories were in last year's Manga Marathon, but I've also come up with a couple of other categories, and actually one of these was recommended to me by a friend. Short story collection. So basically a collection of short stories. An example of that might be Satoshi Kon's Dream Fossil. So what Dream Fossil is it's actually a collection of one-shots that Satoshi Kon did early on in his career. It's really interesting to read, and I was thinking to myself, I remember when I was reading it, why don't I make short story collection a category? Another one would be Time Killers by Kazuo Kato? I can't remember her name specifically. She's the creator of Blue Exorcist. And I'm just trying to think of some other category of short story collection. I'm not entirely sure, but basically if it collects short stories together from one mangaka, and all of the stories are complete in that one book, then that'll count for that category. After that, we have Leiji Matsumoto. Leiji Matsumoto is the creator of a couple of very prolific manga series, which went on to get very famous anime adaptations. He created Space Pirate Captain Harlock. He created Space Galaxy Express, was that another one? He created a wide variety of works, and one of his manga got released recently in English, Queen Emeralda. So I was thinking, in order to celebrate, why don't I make that him a category? There is a couple of other manga that were released in English by him that are out of print now. If you have one of those, that'll count as well. And of course, if you're reading in a different language, like I know France have a huge amount of Leiji Matsumoto to pick from. So if you can read French, that'll certainly count. And finally, this one was the one that was recommended to me by a friend. He was recommended to me by Adam, also known as Archangel Manga, and that is non-fiction manga. And I was thinking, God, what a great category to pick. Basically, what this has to be is this has to be based on a true story, or it has to be like an autobiography or something like that. An example of that would be A Drifting Life by Yoshihiro Tatsumi. That's his own life, the story of his own life, how he grew up, how he got into manga, how he influenced the manga industry, etc., etc. Another example might be Onward Towards the Noble Deaths, which, even though it has all fictional characters, are based on Shigeru Mizuki's own experiences during World War II. Another manga that was released recently was the Osamu Tezuka story, which I intend to pick up, which was written by a mangaka who worked with Osamu Tezuka, and basically it's a kind of a biography of Osamu Tezuka's life and like how he influenced the industry, etc., etc. So, you know, there's actually a pretty good variety of non-fiction manga out there, and I was thinking, yeah, not all manga has to be, you know, fictional stories. So if it's based on real stories, then that'll count for non-fiction manga, and those are all the categories. So basically, 3 of the mandatory categories you've got to do. But then you can pick 3 other categories and that'll be done. Now, if you complete all of 6 of those categories during those 24 hours and you still have time left over, you can do another category or you can read other manga. You have to keep reading until the very end. And besides that, is there anything else I should... Oh, yeah. So this will start on the 1st of December and it'll end on the 31st of January. Now, I notice a lot of people don't tend to put up videos during December, but, you know, I like to have the December option out there anyway, simply because, you know, if someone wants to put up a video or 2 during that time, then that won't have, like, all the videos coming in all at once. The other thing you got to do is once you've uploaded your video, you've got to contact me and, like, preferably message me. Message my YouTube account and say to me, oh, I just did your 24-hour manga marathon, here's my entry, etc., etc. I'll take a look at it, and if I believe it fulfills all of the criteria for the manga marathon, I'll include a link in the description below. So if you're watching this past January 31st, 2017, then there should actually be a variety of videos in the description. That'll be for your viewing pleasure. The only other thing I should mention is the fact that there is only print manga is going to be acceptable. I'm sorry, I know digital manga is becoming more and more popular these days. You know, there's a variety of services out there where you can buy your manga digitally. But I'm not entirely sure how I'd be able to monitor that people actually bought the manga instead of like pirating it on a website or something. So you're gonna have to buy the manga and show it in the video. I'm sorry, I know at some point I should be able to, you know, make it, you know, that you can actually read digital manga. But at this point in time, I'm just not confident enough that people wouldn't just pirate stuff if I made digital an option. So it has to be print. Sorry about that. And I believe that's all of it. So yeah, let's all get ready for December 1st. I'll be looking forward to this manga marathon and seeing, you know, all the videos that people create, all the series that I'll find out about, and, you know, hear about people's opinions. I'll be looking forward to it. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye-bye.